Path of Titans is a phenomenal game with a phenomenal modding scene. However, one of the oldest creatures that were added to the game as a mod, being Giga, has been through several iterations, and yet I don't think there is a single good Giga mod in Path of Titans, or one that's being currently made. And I kind of want to share my thoughts on that. Now, before I start the video, this is going to be a disclaimer. This is my opinion. This is the internet. You can have all the right to disagree with my opinion or challenge my opinion in the comments below, but please be respectful about it. Secondly, I do not wish harm upon any of the mod developers who have made these Giga mods. This is a critique of their work, not anything rude or anything harsh towards them. This is just my thoughts on the mods and where they fail from a design principle. Now, with that out of the way, I want to talk about the mod teams. Now, PT has been around since the dawn of Path of Titan modding. If you don't know, Primordial Tyrants was actually one of the first mod developers, and in fact, the Giga mod and the Argent mod were two of the first mods ever added to the game back in 2022. Might have been actually earlier. I can't exactly remember because it's been so long. But they've been around since the start of Path of Titans modding. And they've always kept the bar very high. The exception being with their first mod, which was Giga. Which, to be fair, looks fairly good. But enough about Primordial Tyrants. I want to talk about Divine Beast. Divine Beast Giga came a bit later in Path of Titans, eras. So it had a lot more time to figure out the design philosophy of Path of Titans and apply that. And of course, Primordial Tyrants Giga follows suit. But I also want to point out that I will not discuss anything that's been going on about the Divine Beasts controversy, because I don't think it's my place to talk about it. There are several videos already discussing about it. If you look at my screen right now, through this script, I screenshotted and got down the abilities of every single ability between the two Giga mods so I do not get one thing wrong. That's right, I had to go in-game and grab each one of the ability icons and stat icons to throw up on screen, and it's been all thrown into a Google Doc as we speak, just so I can read it out to you guys. This took me 2 hours of my life for a quick throwaway video while I work on my Deadlock video. How fun! Anywho, let's talk about the Primordial Tyrants Giga, since, well, it was the first one to come, and its TLC actually fixed a lot of problems I had with it. If you don't know, during the start of Primordial Tyrants Giga mod, it was so good at bleeding that it could bleed out an Argent within 3 charge bites with Rend, which was absolutely insane, but this was during an era where bleed wasn't capped. Bleed never had a cap and could actually cap upwards of 15 minutes. The term death bleed literally comes from this era of the game. And thankfully, with the nerfs to bleed, it's much better. So when we look at its passives, Ironclad, 10% increased armor, protected blows, after landing 3 hits, activate ahead abilities, special effects, and Adrenaline. While in combat, increase your armor by 20%. Adrenaline will quickly run out when out of combat. Oh, phenomenal passives that lead to the sauropod hunting lifestyle and generalist lifestyle that Giganosaurus most likely had. Bite is a decent ability that it does what it says, causes medium damage, but it also is the thing that procs protective blows, and yet it doesn't proc on the other bites for some reason. Anyways, as we move on to heads, we have Rending Bite. This helps it deal more bleed and reduces the bleed heal by 25%. And Rending Bite increases the bleed percent by 25%, basically artificially increasing bleed, and allows bite attacks to do bleed for 5 seconds. Doesn't matter what bite attack it is, it will do bleed. So you might be like, oh, this must be a bleeder. Well then, it has Bulldoze. Charge up attack that deals knockback and high knock and high damage. During the attack, you take 25% less damage when practiced blows is active. Take an additional 25% less damage. So this means that it can tank sauropod tail attacks, right? What about, well, actually, yes and no, because what this basically allows it to do is it allows it to be a brawler. Okay, so Giga is a bleeder brawler then, not really cut out for sauropod work. But wait, we have a charge bite, and it does bleed and piercing damage.
No fucking way.
Wait, what? Okay, so we have 3 different bites for the head slot that do 3 different things. We have bleed, we have knockback, and damage resistance on top of that, and a charge bite that does piercing damage under specific conditions and also does bleed. Now, what is this thing supposed to do again? Hunt sauropods? Why does it need all this? You're sacrificing its main identity for generalization. So this makes no sense. And if people really enjoy the Swiss Army knife of bites that this thing has, but it doesn't really help it hunt sauropods except for Rending Bite. Rending Bite is the only thing here that actually helps it deal with sauropods. Yes, technically with Rending Bite you can have Bulldoze and Charge Bite deal even more bleed, and Bulldoze deal bleed especially. But you gotta hit that within the 5-second timer, and Bulldoze takes 5 seconds itself to fully charge, so you're not gonna get that high damage off fully. You're just going to deal pitiful knockback and probably about 3 seconds of damage wind up, which isn't the max amount of damage that Bulldoze has. So what's the point of using Bulldoze when Charge Bite's right there? And on top of it, it deals piercing damage with practiced blows. So it doesn't make much sense to run either of them. So what about its senses? Maybe its senses encourage this playstyle. Let's look at mobbing. While grouped, another Carcharodontosaur within 200 meters gains 20% increased health recovery rate and 25% slower food and water drain. Once again, a great idea for an ability. Encourages duo playstyles with other Gigas or even other Carcharodontosaurids. But it also leads to some problems such as health recovery rate with the new combat update, which is great. But then you also got to remember that it doesn't have any health recovery things to play into that, which, thank God, this thing would be a menace to fight. But it also makes mobbing surprisingly effective at hunting sauropods, and that's really good. I think this mobbing is a phenomenal ability. And then we have Large Prey Drive. Deal 25% increased piercing damage. Sauropods take an additional 25% damage. So this thing is building for piercing damage. Lovely. And I don't particularly understand why, if you're focusing so much on bleed, why focus on piercing damage that's so conditional that it's really hard to get off any piercing damage in that regard. Stubborn Mentality, getting hit while charging Bulldoze increases knockback multiplier by 50%. And additionally, while charging Bulldoze, you are immune to knockback. And that's where Bulldoze plays into hunting certain sauropods, such as Diplodocus and Amarga, 2 sauropods that are very reliant on knockback. Good idea, but then you knock them away, which is not what you want to do. You need to get in, ignore the knockback, and do damage. The whole problem with some of these sauropods, not Argent, is that they deal knockback, and there's no way to prevent that knockback. And if there is, it prevents it too much and makes them impossible to lose against. So you kind of have a lose-lose situation here. And finally, with the final sense, Cephalic Phase. Increase stamina recovery by 25% and 100% increase to acceleration when within 50 meters of a bleeding creature. Finally, something that focuses around bleed. And it is good. I have no complaints about it. Now we move on to its hides, and its hides are actually really, really good. Matter of fact, I think they're better than DB's, and DB has higher quantity, but Divine Beast Giga doesn't really have like the proper balance of hides. So let's take a look. Challenger's Mantle. This is the one that I'm not too sure about. All larger enemies within 30 meters lose 25% of their bleeding heal rate when bleeding. Adrenaline fills twice as fast. So this plays into the passive adrenaline while also encouraging more bleed play. If only this thing had more bleed bites. I wonder why. But this is a good hide. I think this works better as a sense than it does a hide. And the adrenaline increase is actually really cool, and it fills twice as fast. So it makes brawling actually more effective with it. Wait, isn't this thing supposed to hunt sauropods? Why can't it brawl? Anyways, Rugged Hide, increase bleed heal and fracture heal, poison heal, venom heal, and toxin heal by 20%. Holy shit! So it's basically your standard regenerative hide that you see on Iguanodon and all your other official playables. Then we get to the hide that makes this creature so much fun to play. Die Hard. Gain up to 4 times increased stamina recovery and 50% faster attack cooldowns while below 35% health, scaling with the amount of health missing. Die Hard is a phenomenal ability that makes playing Giga in long-term fights very fun. But here comes the problem. Giga can't really take advantage of it because he has to drop so far below health. Yes, I know about the recent reworks to Die Hard, but still kind of frustrating to play around. When you're at 35% health, a single Argent tail swing to the head can usually kill you. Usually certain attacks will just absolutely demolish you at 35% health, and you don't even get the benefit of it. Because you got to remember, the only way you're going to get that 4 times stamina recovery rate and the 50% faster cooldowns is if you're at the lowest health margin. Otherwise, it's constantly scaling the lower health you go, and it's constantly diminishing the higher health you go, to the point where it's not even worth getting when you're at that 35% health margin. Maybe if it was at 50% and it grew a bit slower, then it would be more justifiable to bring along as a hide. But right now as it stands, you pretty much only want to bring Rugged Hide. And now we're getting on to the calls. A defensive call and offensive call. Pain Inhibitor, deal your resolve against incoming damage. Decrease the amount of damage taken by 25% and Bone Break by 50% received for 20 seconds and have bleeding rate for the duration of the ability. Once again, why are we encouraging brawling on a theropod dinosaur that was lighter than T-Rex, was more flimsily built than T-Rex? I don't know. And finally, Frenzy Bite. While active, Charge Bites will tear meat from the target and applies the wounded status, reducing bleed healing by 10% per stack up to 6 stacks. Eating the torn meat will restore 15 stamina. And Frenzy restored my hope again, and Frenzy is kind of the best one to run while in groups. Pain Inhibitor is your best solo call, while Frenzy Bite is your best group call. But once again, this falls into the problem. What the fuck is this thing's identity? Like, don't get me wrong, this mod is great, it is fun to play, but is it a good Giga mod? And does it influence the actual creature that it's based on? No, not particularly. And yes, I know Alderaan with the recent Alia Ramus TLC, watch my video on that, shameless plug, also don't really care about full realism, but it has to be rooted in realism. And to be frankly, none of these bites really encourage the sauropod hunting lifestyle. It encourages more of a brawler style, and it actually kind of struggles against certain sauropods. If you look in the clip currently while I'm discussing this, I'm able to take down a Diplodocus on my own, but that's purely because I've been playing for 6,000 hours and I've been putting so much time into the game that it's really just, I'm really just taking advantage of errors of the person. If we went against someone who is, like, for example, equal skill level, I would almost always lose this fight. I'd almost always, and Amarga fights are usually a 50-50 split on whether you will win or lose them. Now, keep in mind, we just picked a random deathmatch server. It might not have the proper stats and might have stat adjustments to it, so my opinion might be null and void here with some of these clips in the background. But right now, as it stands, the Giga mod is kind of underwhelming that Primordial Tyrants has made, at least the TLC-wise. In my opinion, they need to focus on either bleed, knockback, or piercing. You can't have all three and have your cake too, because in a game where you have multiple save slots, specialization is always better than generalization. Hi, Editor EJ here, currently editing the video that you're currently watching. I would like to amend one of my opinions here. I think you can have all three of these archetypes and it can work well within a creature. The problem is that it just doesn't work with Giganotosaurus itself. For example, there is a very large Abelisaurid. That Abelisauroid being the Kenyan Giant, or as it's more well known as Titanovenator, which was a 4 to 6 ton Abelisauroid, probably closer in size to Giganotosaurus itself. So I personally think this would fit the kit quite well of that creature, but either way, I think PT's Giga mod is fine. I'm just pointing out how it's a great mod, just not a good Giga mod, if that makes sense. Hopefully, Divine Beast will have a better design to it. So let's take a look. Ironclad, 10% armor. That's to be expected with theropod dinosaurs of Apex tier. Accelerator, plus 10% trot out of combat timer. Not a bad idea. It makes fights approaching easier. And Southern Tyrant, plus 10% armor and stamina in combat timer. Interesting. Bite does medium damage and does an extra 20% piercing damage on top of it. Oh, we're doing a piercing damage, Giga? That sounds really fun. Let's take a look at the head slots. Renjaw, 100 AP damage and 25% increase on head and neck attack on shots. This is actually a really good idea. Having a piercing damage based Giga makes sense. It makes it stronger against sauropods and weaker against smaller creatures. And I hope that the other... Okay. Let's get this over with. Gouging Bite is a charge bite that does high bleed and decreases bleed heal by 20%. So, once again, like Primordial Tyrants Giga, it deals extremely high piercing damage, and it also deals extremely high bleed damage. Just like PT Giga, it has Flesh Graze, but instead of being integrated to a call, it's its own bite. You rip a chunk and heal 30 health, and you reduce the bleed heal by a substantial amount. Okay, let's see. Oh, an actually unique bite. A bite that gets stronger with each bite. That being Sangjun Snap? Please, Divine Beast, don't kill me for misreading your abilities. I'm dyslexic. Please don't kill me, please. Now we get into senses. Blood Soak. Bite will cover you in blood. Increase stam regen by 40%. So it's just Tyranititan, which is already kind of a stupid bleeder. Oh wait, the patch butchered it. Never mind. Then we have Bloodlust. Push your... Okay. Why would I use this? It says it just nullifies damage, and through testing, it doesn't nullify knockback, so what's the fucking point of using this? And if you use it below 15% HP, you just die? Okay. And then we have the other two senses, that being driven by blood, gain 25% increased acceleration and 5% increased sprint speed when within 50 meters of a bleeding creature. Okay, the increased acceleration, great idea. Increased speed, great idea. But it also relies on bleed. Okay.
Alright. I said, alright.
And then Razor Bite deal 12% increased piercing damage. I see that we're going down the same route here. Unlike the Primordial Tyrants Giga, this one has arm slots. Why does this thing have a claw attack Like, no, really. Why does it? It just reduces stamina and adds medium bleed damage by 0.5. What's the point of claw attack? I don't know. And okay, this is just bulldoze, but without the charge up. An attack that deals medium damage and knockback momentarily boosts the Giga's armor by 4%, stacks twice. And that doesn't... Why are we stacking armor through smashing or shoving something? I'm starting to notice a trend. Maybe this is just me, but why does this feel like they're pulling every single ability that involves the shove, increasing armor or reducing damage taken, from the Acrocanthosaurus from Ark Survival Evolved? Just something I'm noticing and making a parallel here. Let's move on to its hides, because it has 5 hides. Overmatch, receive up to 12.5 reduced damage from heavier opponents and increase stamina recovery rate by 12.5%. Not a bad idea. Kind of just means that this is a better version of Dasp's armor ability, so that's lovely. Let's look at the next hide, Butcher's Mantle. Taking hits grants a stacking 25% acceleration boost and 105% increased bleed on attacks, up to a maximum of 125% acceleration and 47.73% bleed for 15 seconds. Not bad, but this thing isn't exactly tanking anything. Yes, it is larger than pretty much all the other Apexes. Actually, might constitute a sub-Titan category. But yeah, no, like why are you sacrificing valuable resource that is your health pool just for a moderate increase? And the way that the ability explains it doesn't really explain it well, and it makes it seem like the ability is actually doing a lot more than what it's actually doing. Rugged Hide, we don't need to talk about Rugged Hide. It's literally the exact same as Primordial Tyrants Giga's effect. Increase bleed heal and fracture heal and poison heal and venom heal and toxin heal by 20%. Alright, let's go on. Forward momentum, reduce movement stamina sprint cost by 7.5%. And increased knockback inflicted by all knockback abilities by 25%, but reduce acceleration by 10% and turn speed by 3%. Why would you ever use this? Giga only has one move that deals knockback other than its tail attack. Why would we use it? Dry Blood. Blood will deplete 9% slower. So basically, it's just Tyrannotitans. We move on to its legs, and its legs actually have something. Enraged Charge. It's just a charge. It does actually a shockingly high amount of damage. I have charged into people as they're running away to kill them. It is shockingly strong. Speaking of strong, we have Strong Legs. Take 60% less knockback and 15% increased fracture healing. That is a phenomenal ability to have on Giga, since a lot of sauropods, like I said, deal knockback in this game. The only one being the exception, that being Argent, and Argent deals fracture damage, so once again, Strong Legs is completely understandable on why the bring, and Stomp is a great idea for an ability because it does increase damage to smaller targets, and it's a small radius, but it does a lot of damage. I've lost teammates on servers that this mod has been on to the Stomp. Whether that be Apex or Velachis, I've lost teammates to hunting these guys because of the Stomp. Stomp is a great addition. And then we move on to its only call, Royal Bellow. Increase attack damage by 15%. And increase 45% knockback resistance for Karkar Odontosaurids. Does not stack. So technically, if you stack this on top of Strong Legs, you are reducing your knockback by 105%. Which is a lot, but I don't think it helps it in the long run. And the 15% attack damage is more in the right direction, but I kind of like how Primordial Tyrants did Frenzy Bite. But once again, this just feels like a more in-depth version of Primordial Tyrants Giga. It doesn't really fix any of the problems that Primordial Tyrants did, nor does it really help Giga in its sauropod hunting niche.
yes, this thing can hunt Argents like a beast. There's several videos of them doing it, but it doesn't do it in a, like, interesting way. And I think there are other, and to be completely honest, these mods are both good. Don't get me wrong. They're good mods, but are they good Giga mods? No, not particularly, because they don't have an identity. They generalize and don't specialize. Like here, like PT is the example of generalizing and being average at everything, and DB Giga is generalizing in everything and being phenomenal at it. Well, yes, DB Giga can't really brawl. It kind of can with its very high combat weight and higher speed than most. It's kind of scary. If you look here at this footage, you can see that PT Giga has the faster trot speed and the faster sprint, but DB Giga actually beats it out with a charge and can gain on it quite quickly. When we look at turn radius, we can see that DB Giga actually beats out PT Giga in terms of turn radius, which, why do these things have good turn? I'll explain that in a second, but on a one-on-one fight, DB Giga just wins every time. It's not really that hard to dispute it, though.
So, with all that being said, I would personally like to propose a possible Giga TLC, or at least my take on what a Giga mod would be. Now, keep in mind, this is not me telling Divine Beasts or Primordial Tyrants how to balance or how to design their creatures. This is, if I was in the shoes of a mod developer and I had to design a Giga mod, this is what I would design. A good friend of mine, his name is Vuk, he does model work. He made a Giga model, or at least the outlines of one, for a project of his, and I offered to mock up what a Giga mod in Path of Titans would look like. Now, keep in mind, there are 3 core design philosophies that I must mention here on why it's designed this way. First of all, 1, it must be designed within the same style as Path of Titans itself. I do not think the diverting from the design philosophy of Path of Titans helps mods and can sometimes actually hurt them while working with them. 2, the design of the mod was made with other mods in mind, such as sauropods, hence why it's designed the way it is. And 3, it doesn't have to do bleed. Now, before you say whatever you have to, in my opinion, I think bleed is a very overused and overdone quirk within mods. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying Giga mods can't have this. I'm just saying what I think. And this is our Giga mod.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Now, I know, my drawing and shading is quite bad, and it is not well done in the slightest. I very clearly traced over Vuk's model and added fat and muscle where needed, and the coat of the Giga is based on a paleo art illustration. But this is my Giga, and I'll talk about the moves and how it's supposed to be designed. First of all, let's talk about its passives. Steadfast is its main passive. Every 40 seconds, ignore all knockback from one attack. This doesn't just mean it ignores knockback from the attack that does knockback. No. There's layers to this. Any attack will proc this every 40 seconds. So let's say you get hit by a T-Rex bite, that would activate Steadfast. If you get hit by a Ramphorhynchus bite, that would proc Steadfast. So you have to be smart for when you go in, so you don't get the knockback sent to you. So this makes it easier for you to hunt a Margosaurus, it makes it easier for you to hunt Barsboldia. You are basically a hunter of creatures that rely on knockback. However, this doesn't just play into official creatures, you also can do this to non-official creatures, such as the Diplodocus mod, the Brachiosaurus mods, and the Camarasaurus mods. So there's a lot of good stuff here that can help you here just with the passive alone. And finally, it's a second passive, Big Shot. Increase armor against creatures, but 4,500 combat weight and above. So The entire philosophy around this ability is it should be strong against things larger than it, weaker against things lighter than it. And for that trade-off, it gets 5% extra armor. Hence the new ability, Big Shot. As for bites, you have a simple bite and then you have a headbutt. If you don't know, Giganotosaurus actually had a very heavily cranized snout. For what purpose, we don't know, but it was hard and rough, and we believe that it had some kind of boss, whether this was used in ritualized shoving matches or not, who knows. It makes knockback make sense on a Giga mod, but I'm not doing that since we want to have this thing have an identity. So it will do 60 damage with the headbutt, and bite will do 50. No additional status effects or anything. But headbutt will have a slightly slower cooldown of 2 seconds, while bite will have a cooldown of 1 second. As for head, this is where its main identity will come. It gets 1 slot for the head, and you can pick between 3 different bites. Its first bite being piercing bite. It's the exact same as Despletos, and yes, we are making a piercing damage focused Apex. Something that has never been done in modding, and something that has never been done in Path of Titans itself. Piercing bite would be its standard head attack, but you could also get piercing snap, something that applies pain shock. What is pain shock? The new ailment that this thing has. When you get a chunk ripped off of you, you would feel the pain of that, or at least not right away. You would have adrenaline kick in, and while it would hurt, what would all that blood loss and nerve endings ripped off do to a person? You would go into pain shock, take a bunch more damage, and you would hurt. However, pain shock's ailment can stack up to 3 times on its own. And each one of these does 20 piercing damage. So if you stack 3 of these, it does 60. Plus the 30 damage that piercing snap does, which, keep in mind, piercing snap doesn't deal piercing damage. Otherwise this thing would be really strong. You can end up keeping the fight going for long periods of time while you're still resting and they're still in combat timer. And of course we have Breakpoint, a charge bite that rips off massive chunks off the target, and it actually works as edible food. Now keep in mind you're not going to be regenerating much health from this, it only regenerates 15 HP. But for the smaller health pool that Giga has, and to not encourage insane sustain like we saw with the golden age of Tyranititan and the Giganotosaurus mod by Divine Beasts, I think this is a fair trade-off. And also Breakpoint does apply 1 stack of Pain Shock. For senses, we have Feral Instincts, increase piercing damage by 10%, Tenderizer, which is where Headbutt plays in. Tenderizer is the effect applied by the Headbutt. Tenderizer will increase piercing damage by 20% for 1 single attack in a 10-second window. So this does not apply to Pain Shock, but rather this applies to Piercing Bite or Breakpoint, depending on which one you are currently running at that time. Now keep in mind, Feral Instinct is more consistent, but Tenderizer is if you're a risk taker, if you want more of that. So for example, if you're using Breakpoint, instead of dealing 100 damage, you deal 120 with Tenderizer, or with Feral Instincts, 110. For example, with Piercing Bite, you would deal 60 damage on its own, but with Feral Instincts, you would deal 70, and with Tenderizer, you would deal 80. Piercing is hard to balance, and if we keep piercing damage low, but also make it semi-consistent, it balances things out, especially when you're fighting low tiers. And now we go to the final and strongest sense, in my opinion, being Shedded Teeth. Now you might be wondering, what does Shedded Teeth do? It helps enhance your Pain Shock. You leave teeth in the target with each piercing snap, and this stacks up to 6 times. Over the course of a certain amount of time, each stack will go off one by one. The best way I can describe this is Sephiroth's side beat in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And I'm not joking when I say this, it would function very similarly, and this is how Pain Shock works. And because of this, if it stacks up to 6 times, yes, you're dealing upwards of 120 damage. But keep in mind, if you're not consistently putting on piercing snaps, you're never going to get that, because Pain Shock activates, or procs as it would be, every 20 seconds. So you wouldn't really have enough time to get that on, and you would need to get body shots for that to work, because if you hit the tail, you're not really getting pain shock on. For metabolisms, we keep it simple with Hyper Carnivore, and for hides, we give it 4. Die Hard, as per mentioned, one of the best hides in design-wise, and I think it works incredibly well on carnivores such as Aloe and PT Giga. Resilient Hide is a standard, and we are going to be adding another hide called Wide Guard. This reduces the cooldown on Steadfast by 20%, so a 40-second cooldown would go down to 30 seconds. May not be good for certain hunts, but if you're hunting Diplodocus or Amargas, it works pretty well. And finally, Slick Skin. Yeah, we need to have some countermeasures for lower tier carnivores, because if we don't, then, well, Giga's going to get mollywopped by a Kilobator Pax or Alioramus, which is arguably the worst creature in the game right now. For Backlimb, we have 6 abilities. Braced Legs reduce uphill movement and decrease fall damage by 10%. Strong Legs decrease knockback by 60% and increase bone break and fracture heal by 15%. Of course, we're giving it a stomp, and we're giving it surprise attack. Of course, it's going to function exactly like Megalania's and Alioramus' sneak attack, where it does increase your speed by a large margin. However, it takes longer to charge it up, and it's not going to make you as fast as T-Rex does. And of course, we're also going to well, we're giving this thing such a low stamina pool, and you'll see why in a sec. For Tails, we're giving it Tail Attack, Dash, and Armor Tail. Tail Attack is self-explanatory. You just do a little bit of knockback and a little bit of damage. Dash is the exact same as Tyranidine's Dash, and Armor Tail is quite self-explanatory. I know they removed this ability because it was very strong in groups. For something that is hunting apexes, and especially large ones at that, it benefits from Armor Tail, and since it requires that help with Armor Tail, I think it functions quite well with the kit. Especially because you're losing out on a tail attack, and to be fair, we're giving this thing T-Rex levels of turning. So, the reason why we're doing that, simple as, Karkar Odontosaurids were not built for turning. The way that T-Rex's hips were built, or Tyrannosaur hips were built in general, allowed it to turn like, quoting Goji Center here, a ballerina from hell. And we finally move on to the voice. Rallying Call, where we are straight up pulling from Spino, no changes here. And finally, we have probably the most unique one, and the one I am not sure how strong that would be, that being Colossus. Colossus, when activated, you will ignore all knockback for 30 seconds. Yeah, this one is kind of hard to decide whether that's overpowered or underwhelming. It really depends on the target that you're fighting. It might be absolutely devastating for one and absolutely miserable for another. But that's really up to you to decide. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video. Before the video ends, I would like to say this. Primordial Tyrants and Divine Beasts, if you even bothered to watch this video all the way to the end, don't change your mods. They're fine as is. I'm just pointing out my problems with them. Don't listen to me. If everyone loves them and everyone plays them, don't listen to me. It's just my opinion here. And anyone who watched all the way to this point, thank you for even bothering to hear out my thoughts and opinions and how I would design a Giga mod myself. I'm currently very sick while editing this, and I've had to make several edits, so that's why my voice changes throughout it. And I'm going to continue working on my Deadlock video, and don't expect many uploads for a while. I want to get this Deadlock video out, but this was meant to be a quick throwaway video, and it's approaching probably the 30 to 40 minute mark, depending on where you're watching it. So, thank you all for watching. Stay safe, God bless, and if you disagree with me, or if you want to challenge my ideas, feel free to comment them below. I'm always open to discussion.